Awesome. Well, Philip, thanks so much for joining. I'm here with Philip Kaplan, who's the CEO of GameWorks, which is a company that's been around kind of as long as I've been in the industry, actually, in one form or another. Thanks for joining.
Pleasure, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So first of all, where are you coming to us from?
So I'm with the rest of the world working from home, as am I. I'm sitting in my living room in San Francisco, California.
Okay, cool. You're a Bay Area guy. I thought you might have been a SoCal guy because of the Surfline connection.
I lived in Newport Beach for 15 years, so
that was
loved
it.
SoCal, and I ran an entertainment business down there, and but back to my roots up here.
Yeah, cool. Well, so look, this is a crazy time. The first thing is how's your head, how's your heart right now with everything that's going on?
Look, these are rough times, and so I mean, it's literally the first few weeks of this, we were working 24/7, and I actually realized that if you want to lead, you need to be leading from a place of calm and navigating through it and continuing to keep steering towards a horizon as opposed to being in any kind of funk or panic. So, I very intentionally have gotten away from anything electronic on at least one weekend day for the purposes of, again, trying to, because this thing's going to be lasting for a while, and nobody, whoever says they're in the know, I'm trying not to be in the crystal ball business. I'm trying to be in the navigate it successfully for both our guests and our team members, regardless.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think, calm leadership in this day and age is absolutely what's needed, especially we're not seeing that from a lot of our leadership in the political arena, unfortunately. So, and so you guys, like GameWorks, has really been playing on this intersection of esports and family entertainment centers. And there's so many definitions of esports based on who you ask. I'd love to get your definitions. What is esports to you and your company?
Sure. So esports, quite simply, it means competitive video game play. And so you've got all kinds of different, now that it's a hot buzzword, just like with any industry, which is a hot buzzword, you see the word used by a lot of companies because they want to attach themselves to that hot buzzword. But esports is it's effectively a large audience that is interested in watching other people play competitive video games, and then it's all of the ecosystem around providing that competitive play, whether it's teams, leagues, venues, software platform providers, game publishers that run leagues or have entrants, and much like a decathlon versus football, it's not one sport. So football, you've got really one monopoly league that governs all the rules and has essentially all of the dollar share. And in gaming, it will never be like that because there are probably 17 to 20 viable esports that are all, in many cases, owned by different companies that are in different countries. And if they can gather enough audience and player share to make it an economic esport, it'll work.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that was one of my first learnings. I moderated a panel at the Consumer Esports Conference and really didn't know much going in. I'm just moderating as a moderator, not as an expert. And they were talking about the Nintendo Super Mario esports. Well, they'll only play on CRTs because of the latency and the refresh rates and the different nuance between different games within the esports umbrella. And that opened my eyes to where esport is akin to sport, as in, Super Mario is akin to football, and curling might be akin to League of Legends, right? And those are terrible analogies.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? So you guys were the first ones, really, FEC, that I know, a chain that went all in on esports. Why was that? What was the strategy behind that? And then what's it been like for you guys?
So The company, I got involved in the company. I went on the board of the company about 3 years ago, and I joined as a CEO 2 years ago, or just coming up on 2 years ago. The company was already in esports since really before it became esports. So, if you go back to the original founding days when it was founded by some of the big Hollywood entertainment companies, GameWorks, there was always discussion of the company having competitive video game play, and it's just any human endeavor in which you can participate very quickly becomes you can compete, and then maybe very quickly from there becomes you can place bets on it. And so that no different with video games. And so organically the company was maybe 1 foot in to esports when I got here, and it was of the things that we were doing, it was the most interesting and exciting. So the question wasn't, should we do esports or not do esports? It was, okay, should we position this as kind of our core growth product line versus arcade, which is a great product line, but we're one of many companies that has an arcade offering. We're very good at it, but there's plenty of companies that are very good at that. It's not a differentiator or a why to buy. And so we after looking at it, we said, okay, it's a big enough market to be interesting, and we're going to have to figure it out. Anybody who would go into a new growth market, you don't want to be so early that you get slaughtered, and you don't want to be so all in that you make an investment that you'll never get a return on. So we just have tested and refined a model iteratively, and what's worked for us is it's not just about putting hardware out, it's about running a pretty constant slate of events. So from a personal background perspective, I come from the technology and real estate sides of things. So from a tech perspective, I could apply a pretty standard tech product management discipline to it, and realize that it was, as we could create and continually reimagine that experience, we'll just fine tune this and it'll work. And so we've had the results are that we've had same store sales growth that was pre-COVID-19 into the double digits, and really very healthy results for the business.
That's amazing, because the family entertainment center industry really struggles with same store growth, and some of your competitors, that's been one of the narratives on the street, is like they really need to solve that. You can't just grow by opening declining revenue stores and maintain a valuation in the market. And so that's fantastic. Now, you'd mentioned a constant stream of events. And I get a lot of people ask me in the FEC industry, hey, should we be getting into esports? And I tell them no, because I don't think they understand the business. And that's one of the things you just hit on. So what are the key differences between running an FEC and running an esports business? And then we'll get into the intersection and how do you navigate that combination?
So I was invited to keynote one of the industry meetings on exactly that topic. I said, look, anybody wants to know exactly what esports equipment to buy to set up your esports lounge, come up to me after the meeting and I'll give it to you. And that being said, I would strongly recommend you think long and hard before doing it, because it's not just about the hardware. This is not the arcade business where you put a popular title out there and they will play it provided you can get them in your doors. This is about having programming on top of the hardware and the right marketing reach and the staying power to do the repetitive buildup of that guest list that wants to come play. So we've done that, and some outreach, and the fact that it's this is getting a community that exists off their couch in many cases. There are many players and many teams that are at all levels, from child to amateur to semi-pro to professional to enthusiast to play for a prize pool across a lot of different titles. So finding a way to bring them into your venue is a lot of the key, and that's just been a lot of trial and error for what works. And then, just like anything in entertainment and attractions, we all know, the whole industry will know that once it's successful, now how long until it stops being successful? Now you got to figure out the next one. So it's been no different than any other product line you would have in entertainment. You've got to keep it fresh and keep it exciting and keep those series going. And we had our New Year's brawl, and we were prior to COVID, we were going into the the Road to Combo Breaker, which is a giant tournament that they have in Chicago that's now canceled for next month. We've done sponsored tournaments where last year we did an event which was sponsored by Dell Computer, Alienware, Tabasco Pepper Sauce, and Cougar Gaming, that all which makes eSports gaming equipment. And there was a $25,000 prize pool. We had press coverage in every local market, and just like any other sport, you've got some really interesting player stories, and we built up that authenticity, and it takes time to do that.
Yeah, I think authenticity is a big word. It gets bandied about a lot now, and with the esports community, I think that's like, and millennials and Gen Zs, like they can sniff it out. Almost like a dog in a bone, right?
Yeah, I mean that's right. It's one of these things, like if you have to say you're authentic, maybe you're not. But so we just try to stay very humble about gee, did that work? Did that not work? What did the players like? What did the players not like? And really go with the data, don't go with the ego, and really try to listen to the guest.
Yeah,
sure that experience every time is good.
And so one of the things I grew up with a neighborhood arcade in a strip center around the corner from my house in the late 70s that I used to hang out with my friends, and it really was a community center, is how, looking back on it, I think we saw it as players. And the guy running the arcade was a bit of a mentor to us, right? I mean, he was the adult that we could talk about all of our issues with, and he seemed really caring. It created this sense of community. And I think the FEC business now has gotten big and corporate in many ways, and it's lost that sense of community. And yet esports is all about community. How are you guys navigating that kind of paradox between the big FEC arcade and the community-based esports center?
By trying to be as localized as possible. So you want to go, if you're going to go buy a pair of running shoes, I'm going to step completely outside of our industry for I happen to be a runner. You want to go to the running store where the people selling you the shoes actually do races and know what they're, so it's the same kind of thing, right? You walk into a GameWorks eSports lounge, it's not whatever teenager we could put in there that's working there. Everybody plays and competes, and they're into the games, and it's really a social gaming interaction, in that there's a reason for a player to want to come in, because they're going to meet other players that are into the same game and maybe learn a few things or have a great time competing. And that goes to the team and our teammates that staff those centers as well. That makes it very local. These are personal relationships that people form.
Yeah, that's great. And so are there advantages then, or what are the advantages of having an esports venue connected to an FEC besides shared facilities, kitchen, GM, stuff like that? Are you seeing advantages in crossover there? Because I noticed you're also opening, looking at some of the news, you're also opening just esports centers, and what's the trajectory of that, and how does it all fit together?
So I think the industry has found from past experience that if you open just a LAN center by itself, it's not a very compelling offering. And because again, it goes to kind of the you can do that at home. Why would I pay you to do it? Having, it just happens to be, I guess from maybe not out of any great act of brilliance, I just happened to come in and take over an FEC. So I'm like, gee, we're going to do this on top of an FEC platform. But that was the company I was already running at the time. So it was more that it does work, though, because of the same reasons that traditional entertainment and dining model works across movies and dining, bowling and dining, games and dining, arcade and dining, and now esports and dining. Look, if you have a good food and beverage experience, you are willing to pay destination prices for that concession option, and that is, I think the industry is pretty well aware of that. And there are many different models based on location and strategy for what that food and beverage mix looks like. In our case, we tend to be, we're urban, we're near urban, in generally larger population centers. And so we have an upscale dining option that we believe would couple well with the arcade and esports offerings. So that was more out of what we had than out of any particular act of brilliance, but it's a proven industry model.
And is that working? Like, are you seeing, because I know the prices on the esports stuff tend to be real. It's like, that's a really price sensitive market. You're essentially, if you look at just the revenue model, you're renting computer equipment in a venue, right? And there's real price sensitivity on the consumer side there. How, are you finding additional per cap revenue from food and beverage and events, and is that working?
Yeah, we've noticed, as we run a calendar of events, and we have to tweak it because, as I said, there's that hit factor where games, once something's been done, now you got to do the next thing. So what we do when we run our successful events that can bring in several hundred people to a venue, the larger ones, we have a pretty good cross-sell factor. And the thing about esports that we realized was that, now that the audience of people that want to watch other people play video games is almost 1-to-1 ratio with the size of the audience that is actually playing these esport video titles.
Wow.
On a global kind of aggregated data basis. There's an opportunity that that +1 that comes into your venue might wander into the arcade and might get thirsty or hungry. So
yeah.
We make a conscious effort to program, bring in a crowd, and do that cross sell.
Yeah, cool. Now the holy grail, or one of the holy grails of the industry, the LBE industry, has been connecting the online and the offline, right? The on-premise and the in-home. There's lots of companies that have had theories, prototypes of how to do it. I don't think I've ever seen it done, or even done poorly versus done well. You guys are really dancing on that razor's edge of online, offline, in-home, in venue. How are you is there something there you can unlock and have people come in and continue at home and then come back? And are they playing the same games at home that they're playing in? It feels like that you've got that dynamic kind of figured out.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it's always a work in progress and always will be. But look, from a beginning perspective, there's hundreds of millions of people that play video games at home on console and PC, and so we knew it was a large audience. We knew that venue would never replace in home. So that wasn't an achievable goal. They're just going to not buy consoles anymore. They're just going to come to GameWorks all the time. That was never a thought process. It was more like, can you do something that is additive to that level of excitement? Give the consumer an additional experience on top of what they already like to do and they already have as a habit. So yeah. that was more the approach than anything. But yes, definitely, we believe that they come and they want to play the same. Look, you get out. If you are a gamer, and sometimes we have some very flamboyant, outgoing people, and sometimes we have some very introverted people that are really into their game, and they need to be comfortable coming into a venue, into a social setting, sometimes with a group of friends and sometimes with total, they walk in as a singleton into a programmed event, and they need to be comfortable doing that. So it's got to be, something that an activity that they're comfortable doing, a game title they're comfortable doing.
Yeah, it's a great point. So, so now we're in this global pandemic, and there's a real paradox here for your business that a lot of others in the FEC industry don't have, which is, you've got people locked in their homes, so they can't come to your venue. But professional, and so therefore professional sports is shut down, right? And been watching, so video gaming is growing across the world now at record rates, which was already a fast growing market. And now you've got professional athletes stepping into esports, and it's really come to the forefront with racing. And I know you guys are playing around with the iRacing. And so you've got Fox and NBC, these main broadcast channels now people start for content. And so they're broadcasting NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One, even dirt car now I see Fox is getting into, and broadcasting on television. Like, how are you guys playing around that, and how are you using kind of that iRacing thing to stay connected with your customers while they're shut down?
Yeah, well, we've been, our model, as you pointed out, I mean, because these are games that you can play via a connected environment, whether it's PC or console, you can play the same game at home. So that's where that becomes a competitive advantage, is that we can run a slate of online events instead of in-venue events. And so we've been doing that. And those events have been basically full to capacity that we've put up for each event. We set up a tournament bracket, and they're full. There's demand, and so in the I guess national or aggregate, video game play is up 75%, and alcohol sales are up 50% since the pandemic. Unfortunately, venue revenue is basically down 100% for everybody. So,
and you can drink and drive in virtual racing, though maybe you shouldn't if it's competitive.
That is true. Yeah, this is not going to help your competitive, but it might be fun.
And so, do you see more, like, where does it go? Like, this crossover between professional athletes now, because athletes have been gamers now for the better part of a decade, right? You've seen lots of Madden tournaments with professional, football players and et cetera. Do you see any indications you're going to see more professional athletes step over into esports and more broadcast of that during the real sports blackout?
I think you'll have that. It's definitely more of an interest level thing than an ability thing in most cases. Now, you and I stepping up and playing Call of Duty with a couple of professional Call of Duty players, it'd be like getting on the basketball court with Michael Jordan. You have no chance.
Yeah.
But so you could be a very good NBA player, but you're probably not going to compete with the top NBA 2K player, even though you are a great basketball player.
So is that why because I think racing's the exception to that, probably. And you are seeing some of I watched a couple of the Formula One races. I was here in Melbourne. They canceled the Melbourne Grand Prix and said, hey, let's just do it in esports. And the professional racers, some of them did really, really well. And because I think that in a simulator, they train in simulators and the track dynamics are the same. And do you think that's why racing has kind of crossed over, and maybe you're not going to see it with, as you've said, with those other sports as well?
It's possible. I think it's going to depend on iRacing's one racing title. There are a number of different racing titles, and how realistic is the equipment and that sort of thing, and how realistic does the simulator approach the track top goes to that point. But yeah, that's right. Some of the players have done quite well, but still they're not going to be in the top, the top video game players, because there is still that bit of a difference. It's such specific training to the specific esport.
Yeah. What about, do you think maybe they'll just have segregated? Will they'll just create, would the NBA create an esports league just for their players maybe, and bring that in? Because like the advertising revenue drop off, like the broadcast companies are going to be hurting too. I mean, you can only run so many home run derbies on replay on ESPN before people just tune out, right?
Well, look, I mean, the easiest thing to cut if you're a corporate marketer is your ad, and you're trying to preserve balance sheet, is advertising, because you can cut it instantly. So unfortunately for the advertising industry and the networks, they're even though viewership is way up, ad dollars are just down, and there's no getting around that until the economy can open up again. So what I'll say one thing about the NBA. NBA has been a particularly visionary group. The NBA 2K publisher, Take-Two Interactive, actually gave a NBA 2K League franchise to each of the NBA teams. So the teams were integrally involved in rolling out that particular esports league. So it's had that crossover, which was, again, organically and authentically driven by player and team interest in partnership with their publishing partner.
Yeah, interesting.
It was a unique case. I think some of the, the iRacing and the NASDAQ folks, or not NASDAQ, NASCAR folks are trying to emulate that. And I think, off to a good start.
It's going to be fascinating watching this whole market. And I can tell as somebody who loves being in emerging markets, how much, despite the circumstances you find yourselves in, it's got to be a fascinating time to be in this business. Yeah,
I mean, so esports we believe it's a secular trend. So we're playing that, and that's not changing because of COVID-19. Obviously, COVID-19 is a challenge for the whole industry. And I just, wish everybody the best. And I'm sure that there'll be companies that get really badly hurt, and hopefully most of us can survive and reopen and get back to doing what we like to do, which is entertainment.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to see some glimpses of good news come out of New York, and so hopefully that's the beginning of the end of the bad news, and we'll start having some light at the end of the tunnel. And my heart goes out to all of the workers, like the I grew up in the restaurant business, like restaurants, like the people who live on the edge. You and I are going to be fine, but there's so many people that live on the edge, and I spent most of my life on paycheck to paycheck too. I know the fear that happens. My heart goes out to your employees and your workers, and everybody that's really been impacted in this thing. We're staying busy and staying distracted, but the reality is this sucks for a lot of people.
Yeah, these are bleak. The actual navigating the shutdown is bleak, and there's no way to sugarcoat that.
Yeah. Last question: are you getting any surfing in? Are the beaches still open up there? Or
I have not been out since the shutdown. They're a little bit discouraging people to go out on the lineup, but I've been getting a lot of running, and I've been looking at the water a lot. Let's put it that way.
I saw this morning they shut trestles in San Onofre, which were my home breaks, but I'm in Australia right now, and they're discouraging gathering, but you're still allowed to surf. They just don't want you driving a long way to surf. But I did get a session down in Torquay over near Bells Beach a couple of weeks ago, and hopefully the weather will turn. I'll sneak out for another session here soon. So
yeah, sounds great. Well, yeah. So you're right down the road from my home break was always Huntington Pier South.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Yeah. It's I've surfed Huntington once. It was a paddle out for Andy Irons. Mm-hmm. And caught the wave of my life on the way in from that paddle out. It was one of those weird moments when the spiritual and the physical intersect, and that's a story for another time, though. So,
nice.
Philip, thank you so much for taking the time to join me, and your authenticity. I can say it, you can't, and your transparency is a credit to the entire industry, and I look forward to seeing you in person when we're all out of lockdown and seeing where you guys take this. It's fascinating.
Sounds great. Well, appreciate it, Bob. Have a great day.
All right, bud. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.